911 emergency.
Yeah, we need to send police.
Okay, and what's going on there?
Someone's been murdered.
Okay, someone has been murdered? Okay, in what way? Do you know if they're breathing or they're definitely passed away?
I don't know.
You don't know? Okay, well, what did you see, sir? You're busy, but...
I'm at Haverhill Park. Just send the police. It was me.
Imagine that one day you just wake up and you just recently killed your best friend. Well, this is the story of Randy Herman Jr.
Randy Herman, guilty of first-degree murder.
Today you will see the case of the sleepwalker murderer. Let's go with the video. Randy Herman Jr., born and raised in a little town called Lazyville, where he lived with his mother and sister, with a father who abandoned him for most of his life, and with a relative normal childhood, if we can call it normal. But who is Randy? A man who will become the first of his family to study criminal justice at Mansfield University. His family was so proud of him, but they never imagined the kind of psychopath that was next to them. In the meantime, he was working part-time as a corrections officer at the county jail. And pay attention to these people. This fact is very important because it could have contributed to the fact that years later he committed the atrocity that I'm going to talk about later in this video. Let's remember that all kind of atrocities are seen in juvenile corrections. Not like in an adult one, but we can be sure that weird things happen inside the correctionals. Let's remember that they are not the most holy place on the planet. Since Randy was young, he had a story with drugs, alcohol, and more, but just minor crimes. Then Randy lost his job, dropped out of the school, and moved back home. Now, at his sister's wedding, he was charged again for driving drunk and was sentenced to 1 month in jail. And here he will hit rock bottom because his father was on the breaking news. And what they say on the news? Well, Randy Sr. had murdered his girlfriend on their home.
Now at 3, shocking new details in the murder of a 21-year-old woman whose body was found stabbed more than a dozen times inside a West Palm Beach home.
Here's the big twist in all of this. A TV station in Pennsylvania now reporting that Randy Herman Sr., the father of the suspected killer, he too was charged with murder, accused of killing his girlfriend in February 2015. Now this case was later dropped against him.
And after 2 months running from the police, he took his own life. Due to this event, Randy's mind twisted. He would not longer be the same person, but he wanted to change his life, so he decided to contact Brooke Preston and her sister Jordan. Things are getting heated. Okay, so who is Brooke? Who is Jordan? How they knew each other? Well, Randy, Brooke, and Jordan knew each other since they were in the middle school, and they were very close. So who is Brooke Preston? Friends and family say that Brooke Preston always was the life of a party and grabbed all the attention when she entered a room. They also describe her as a very lovely, caring, spontaneous, and fun to be with it. Her father said in an interview that she loved life. She was the shine of my life, and that man turned it off. As you can imagine, she had a lot of friends, and she was very close to her family, especially her sister. In 2013, she moved to Florida to study at the State College of Florida. Now, in 2016, she moved to West Palm Beach to be with her boyfriend, Brian, and sister, Jordan. When Randy decided to change the course of his life, Brooke offered him a possibility to start fresh. Boy, what a mistake, Brooke. What a mistake. So, that's how Randy moved to West Palm Beach to live with both sisters, once in Florida, they were inseparable. Here I want to say something, and is that Randy claims that he saw Brooke and Jordan as his sisters. However, after a few months, the relationship between them started to get cold, and each of them start to hang out with different groups of friends. And Randy hated this. He had to start working in Walmart, selling internet and cable service. But even after a new life, his old vices came back. He started spending his own money and free time on drinking and partying.
So the day's finally over, and I get my beer.
He started to feel depressed, so he quit his job and lived from the $25,000 he inherited from his father. While Randy was a mess, Brooke was shining in her life. She started to get more serious with her boyfriend, Brian Brown. The boyfriend moved to New York, and since they had already talked about marriage, they decided to move together. As a result, Brooke moved to New York to live with Brian in December of 2026. And now, guys, we get to the days before the crime on the Thursday of March 23, 2017. After living 4 months with her boyfriend, Brooke came back to Florida to pick up the last of her things, including her car. I will never left my car. Jordan picked her up at the airport, went out for dinner with Randy, and then flew out to Denver. On Friday, March 24th, Brooke stayed the whole day on West Palm Beach. So she and Randy decide to go to the beach, have a couple of drinks. They also drink champagne. When the sun went down, they came back to the house and continued drinking. As you can imagine, Randy ended up drinking a lot and was pretty drunk by now. This is where the story becomes a little bit weirder and takes a dark turn. It was night when one of Brooke's friends, Kyle McGregor, received a weird text message from Brooke. Brooke asked Kyle to pick her up because she was tired of him. She texted, "He's being belligerent and stumbling all over, pissing me off." So Kyle decides to drive to Brooke's home.
This is much of a shock to me as it is to everybody else. Randy never, to me, shown anything weird except for Friday night.
Kyle arrives and Randy leaves. While Kyle is waiting for Brooke to get ready, Brooke suddenly storms out of her room, really upset, yelling Randy was butt ass naked, doing this to me, while he took his finger on his lip and doing shh. Of course, Brooke didn't spend the night at the house. And she left with Kyle instead. She was feeling disturbed and didn't feel safe with Randy in the house anymore. In addition to that, something really disturbing is that Randy had a pair of fuzzy handcuffs next to his bed, as well as the murder weapon, a knife. He claimed that the woman liked to be tied down, and they actually enjoy it when he's done it before. The next morning, on March 25th, Randy claims that the following sequence of events is the only thing that he remembers from that day. Brooke comes back to the house to pack more of her things. Randy wakes up hungover and dehydrated and goes to the kitchen to get a glass of water. He meets briefly with Brooke and gets back to sleep. Then Brooke and Kyle go to have breakfast. Despite the way Randy was acted last night, Brooke texts Randy to invite him to breakfast. He declines, but texts her that he needs to give her something for Brooke's boyfriend, a little gift.
The next thing I remember is her calling my name. I had sat up in bed. She came in my room. I told her where the t-shirt was. She picked up the t-shirt. She was smiling, saying thank you. She came over, gave me a hug, and said goodbye. She shut the door.
The scene is horrific out of a slasher movie. Randy opened his eyes and he is covered in blood with a knife in his hand, the same knife that he kept next to his bed. The floors and walls are also covered in blood. And then his worst nightmare. Brooke is lying on the floor, covered in a blanket, dead. He's in shock. He doesn't know what's going on. And that is when he decides to take Brooke's car, drive to park less than a mile from his house, and call 911 to confess to killing Brooke.
Car. That's when he leaves and calls 911.
911 emergency.
You need to send police. Someone's been murdered. I'm at Haverhill Park. Just send the police. It was me. I'm sorry.
After calling 911, police arrive at the scene and takes Randy to the police station. Here, the police start questioning him if they were romantic involved and more things. And he responds that he wasn't in love with Brooke, that she was like his little sister, and that he doesn't remember what happened. The police also calls Brooke's parents and tell them what's happened. However, they cannot believe that Randy could do that. In their eyes, he was a sweet, harmless boy. Well, this sweet, harmless boy just commit an atrocity against your daughter.
You guys anything for water or anything like that? I know. Okay. Okay. Give me 1 second to just make this phone call and I'll be right back.
This is not good. This is a homicide. What? It says a homicide. That means somebody killed her. How did she die?
I can tell you that for right now, it appears that she was stabbed.
Oh my God! No!
Police also brought Jordan into the interrogation room. Remember guys, she was traveling, and asked if they had been fighting, but she responded that everything was pretty normal, that they all were pretty close. So what happened? Why couldn't Randy remember killing Brooke? The defense hired a psychiatric, Dr. Charles Patrick Ewing, to analyze Randy. He learned that Randy had been sleepwalking since he was a child. According to Katie Adams, Randy's mom, she had witnessed several episodes of Randy sleepwalking. On April 30th in 2018, Randy goes to the court facing first-degree murder charge for the death of Brooke Preston. So this is how the defense based their case. Since there no was apparent motive to murder, the murderer didn't remember committing the crime.
And then I come to standing over top of her, covered in blood, and I'm holding a knife in my hand.
And he had a history of sleepwalking, DSM-5. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorder was the basis for the case. In other words, Randy pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. According to his defense team, Randy was sleepwalking by the time he stabbed Brooke. According to that defense, Randy shouldn't be sentenced to life in prison. According to them, during the trial, Dr. Charles Ewing took the stand and talked about a study about sleepwalking and the violence in adults. According to this study, there were 13 criteria that a person must meet in order to prove that sleepwalking occurred. These criteria include history of a childhood, parasomnia, a complex motor behavior, the victim being loved by the attacker, attack followed by confusion, and no attempt to cover up the crime scene. Plus, alcohol helps to commit this type of crimes. And Randy was pretty drunk, remember? Well, the night before. This theory pretend to back up their claim that Randy was sleepwalking during the attack. Furthermore, Ryan took the stand and testified in his behalf, telling the story about the moments he remembers before the attacks. Now, let's remember that it's not very common for a defendant to testify. A small parenthesis, Jordan was subpoenaed to testify in Randy's defense, and she claimed she never saw Randy sleepwalking on the days they lived together. Boom! Of course, people were impressed by this claim of insanity due to sleepwalking. Some others even laughed, taking it as a bad joke.
And you can't go from wide awake to sleepwalking in a matter of minutes.
So now it was time for the prosecutor's attorneys to debunk this theory. Their goal was to prove that Randy had deliberately killed Brooke. To do this, they came up with very compelling evidence against Randy. It was learned that at the crime scene, Brooke was brutally attacked and there was blood in multiple rooms of the house. She received 25 stab wounds. Like I said before, things are getting heated. The attack starts at the end of the hallway, near the bedrooms. It then proceeds down the hallway and into the living room by the fireplace. At the end, Randy dragged Brooke into the hallway. She was expiring blood from her nose and mouth until she finally just succumbed in her final position. Plus, Brooke had defensive wounds. Randy had serious injuries in his hand, so if he was sleepwalking, he should have woken up by now. Are you going to tell me that a sleepwalker stabbed a person 25 times? I mean, 25 times with superhuman strength while he was asleep, and that he never woke up with such deep inflicted wounds? I don't think that even his lawyer believed this. But let's remember that a lawyer must always defend his client to the end. I think Randy is the clearest proof that one can inherit malignant genes from their parents. However, the defensive doctor said that sleepwalkers are well known to have a very high threshold for pain and for arousal. It's very difficult to wake up a sleepwalker. I don't know. What do you think, guys? But the prosecution tried to convince the jury that this is a passionate crime. Of course it is. Of course. That obviously Randy murdered Brooke because he was in love with her and couldn't stand the idea of seeing her with another guy. Randy's motive was sexual in nature. To support this claim, remember that Randy was naked inside Brooke's closet. Do you guys remember that? The night before the murder. If you ask me, that's something creepy as fuck. Now let's take a quick look at the timeline, because this case is getting longer and this guy... One of the main points of the prosecution is that timeline didn't make sense. Let's take a look at the facts. At 8:35 a.m., Brooks arrived at the house. Then at 8:49 a.m., a neighbor is caught on camera going to the residence because he hears shouting. And at 8:57 a.m., Randy gets out of the house and takes Brooks' car. At this moment, we all know that Randy had already committed the crime. So if we analyze the time, Brooke was only 22 minutes inside the house. Between the interactions of Brooke and taking the t-shirt and saying goodbye to Randy, he only had about 5 minutes to go back to sleep. According to forensic psychiatric Dr. Wade C. Meyers, it would have been impossible to go back to sleep so deeply that he started sleepwalking in only 5 minutes. To quote him, he's wide awake minutes before the crime, and you cannot be wide awake to sleepwalking in a matter of minutes. After 9 days of trial and after 5 hours of jury deliberation, the jury found Randy Herman Jr. guilty of the first-degree murder of Brooke Preston.
All right.
Randy Allen Herman Jr., a jury of your peers having found you guilty of first-degree murder, I sentence you to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole.
Shortly after Randy was sentenced to life in prison, in April 2021, Randy decided to appeal his conviction. His appeal was denied. Randy is still convicted to face life in prison. So, what do you guys think about this case? Do you think Randy was truly sleepwalking, or he committed the crime because he was in love with Brooke? I don't know. In my opinion, he's a jealous, crazy son of a bitch. Be honest. Honestly. By the way, guys, making this case makes me realize that you should always be careful of the people you invite into your house, because even your best friend can kill you. Don't forget to subscribe.